like that?
Yeah, if you want to. There you
Should I
go.
pretend I'm drinking out of it too and go like this?
And then like the dust will fall out. Literal attic dust, Jake.
Yeah, let's get into introductions. Who wants to go first? Just tell me who you are and what do you do for Royal Credit Union?
I'll fire away. So Jacob Spees is my name. I am the regional sales manager for the Chippewa Valley market, and then I also supervise the MLOs in Rice Lake, Whitehall, and Menominee, so a little bit farther stretched out of the exact Chippewa Valley. So I've been with RCU for almost 10 years and been doing mortgages since 2005. So a while.
It was a tough time to get into mortgages, wasn't it?
I was before like the crash, which was obviously nice. Not seasoned enough during the crash to really have a great sustainable amount of business coming in, but it was really nice in that, you know, this could be taken two different ways, but there was so little regulation that I didn't have like when I messed up, it was like, who cares? You know, where now if you got in and you didn't know anything, there's so many rules to know that you're like, you know, you need somebody kind of overseeing you all the time to make sure you don't mess up, because there's regulatory rules and then obviously just like do's and don'ts on loans. But yeah, it was so loosey-goosey at that point that I was just like, I was literally given a list of phone numbers to call, and like, well, just start asking people if they want to refinance, and once you get a hot one, you know, bring me in. It was my boss's advice. I'm like, all right, I guess, let's see how this goes. I was like 22 years old. So that was a good introduction to mortgages. It's a little different.
Yeah.
So
And that was not at Royal Credit Union.
not at Royal Credit Union. No, disclaimer for that. No, definitely not.
Things are maybe different. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's part of your role. Are you now the leader who is like, let me know if you have any problems? Like,
Yeah. No, there's rules that I don't make up. And at the time, it was sort of you made up your own, which wasn't the best.
So I am Deb Pletchery, Regional Mortgage Sales Manager. I manage the mortgage loan officers in St. Croix Valley and in the Minnesota market as well. Been in the industry too many years to count. And yes, I was in it during the flop back in 2008. And those are crazy times when the rules weren't as strict as they are now. But that's also what got us into trouble.
Absolutely. Did you guys pick out a donut for this episode?
We talked about that when we came in here.
I really just I was trying to answer like how to relate my favorite donut. So I already had the donut based on my favorite donut. And then I tried to tie it into mortgages, really just like with this sort of a Hail Mary of, well, my favorite donut's the custard-filled
Bismarck.
Bismarck.
Yeah.
Oh
Bismarck.
my gosh, they're amazing. Even Quick Trips. So I'm like, well, how can that be mortgage-like?
You know, we could relate it to, you know, it's great on the outside, but once you get into your house, and that's the exciting part, right?
so it's even better.
Yes, even better.
The best is yet to come. Right? Does that describe the mortgage process? The best is yet to come? Maybe not.
Maybe not, no.
Not accurately.
Yeah.
I could use that, but it wouldn't be accurate.
Oh, okay. That's really the topic of today's episode. We wanted to do an episode about mortgages, mortgage borrowing, the mortgage market right now to see like what are the insights that you guys would have that could help our listeners really understand like is now the right time to be on the market for a house? If you are in that position, what are you thinking? Where are you going? So we just wanted to have a conversation about some of that stuff.
Yeah. I think there's still low inventory out there right now. So it is difficult, but on the other hand, borrowers have more opportunity right now with rates being up a little bit more compared to how they have been in the last few years.
And when you say opportunity, like you just mean it's not like a property is on the market for like a day and then it's gone. There's more opportunity to put your offer in.
More opportunity. You know, if you look at the past few years, when a property would come on the market, you had to be on top of it, and there would be multiple offers coming in, and they would go way above the asking price because it was so competitive. That has slowed down a little bit right now compared to how it was, and plus rates are up a little bit too.
Do you feel like when things are priced right that they're still flying off the market? Like recently we found this house and we contacted the realtor and said, hey, we'd like to look at it. It was like perfect, priced where we wanted it to be. And then we had something scheduled, and my realtor contacted us back and said, they're only taking offers now till today. They've gotten so many. You either have to come now or forget about it.
I think for the last few years, it for sure has been really tough for buyers. You know, you have to be almost willing to buy homes sight unseen. And that happened so many times where people are like, I don't even know, but my realtor says it's great and I've seen a bunch of pictures, so let's just do it. And you just kind of cross your fingers and hope that you're happy with it, you know, next week, next month. When rates rose so fast, like September-ish of last year, I can't remember exactly, but towards the middle end of last year, I think it definitely did weed the pool of buyers out a little bit, just because everybody was kind of panicked. And so I think at that point, sellers started to get a little worried then. And we'd even had some builders that had reached out trying to, you know, they had spec homes that were listed that were maybe sitting longer than they had before. So they were trying to create some incentives. And it seems like there's a lot, the buyers are sort of back. They never really went away. I think they kind of paused. And I think if rates stay steady, it'll stay still a seller's market, though, for sure. I mean, there still is more buyers than sellers by a long shot. And so long as rates don't, you know, I think spike too much again, it'll probably stay like that. And once the summer, you know, warm weather rolls around, that's always, you know, hot for sellers. So I think it'll really help that end of it a little bit, so that maybe homes don't have 1 million offers on it in a day. But like you mentioned, the right home at the right price point, it's going to go fast.
Yeah, and you mentioned the weather and stuff too. So it's really interesting in Wisconsin and Minnesota. The weather warmed up a few weeks ago. And so all of a sudden the buyers are coming out. We're seeing more activity. And what happened? It started snowing. It got cold again. You kind of see it slow down again.
Really? Mm-hmm. I had no idea that pipeline was so like ebbs and flows according to the forecast.
If you worked in a non-windowed room every day, you could probably tell the weather in the spring based on like the phone calls and the activity that you get. Be like, hey, it must be really nice outside. Yeah. Because like the phone's starting to ring. Yeah, it's kind of one of those ironies that just seems to, you know, whether it's like, you know, the full moon, like you notice things happening and then you sort of correlate it together. But it does seem to be oddly correlated.
Also, don't you think, Jake, that, you know, with rates going up, it slowed down the investors? A lot of investors were out buying investment properties to rent out, and that has seemed to slow down a little bit to give, you know, primary resident borrowers an opportunity.
For our areas, do we still see a lot of people, because of like new virtual work environments all around the country, flooding to beautiful Wisconsin and Minnesota?
Oh, definitely. I live out north. Yeah, I live north, and so it's usually, you know, a lot of people coming up for their cabins or second homes, and they're realizing, being able to work remote, that they want to live there permanently. So a lot of people that have been doing that as well.
Yeah. I mean, during COVID, when, you know, to some extent, regardless of what you did, people had a remote work option. And obviously for a lot of people that is maintained. But like the second home markets, I mean, I really feel bad for them. If you lived in Hayward, Wisconsin as like your place that you live for life and you try to upgrade, so many people from all over the country were moving to like these Hayward, you know, these sort of seasonal second home areas normally, that the prices and the market in those communities it was just brutal. I mean, if you lived there and you just made sort of an average wage and you wanted to upgrade, good luck, you know, because everybody from big cities making a lot of money that could work at home was just going to outbid you and pay cash in an instant. So not as much of that, I don't think, at least in Eau Claire, but certainly, you know, a lot of that and some of that happened.
So that's really a benefit of the rates being a little bit higher, right? Like has that slowed, or is that maybe it's just buying more time for, you know?
Yeah, and in the work from home, I mean, I think the people who were going to do that probably did it. You know, it doesn't seem like there's all of a sudden like a new or an additional wave of work from home people that are searching the country for the best place to work. It seems like that kind of happened, and now it's probably just happened. You know, people who are working from home are already doing that. And so I think it's probably slowed down. But yeah, the higher rates for sure took some borrowers out of the market. And I mean, you hate to say not enough, but it's not enough to even out the buyers, you know, the supply side for sure. There's still just more buyers out there. by, I mean, I don't even know what margin, but it seems like a lot.
Is there any silver lining on the market today?
If you're a seller, maybe.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, right. Sellers are still, if you own a home, and a lot of people, that are sort of, transitioning from one home to the next, you have a lot of equity. I mean, rates are on the high side, but I think the silver lining, even if you bought today at a seemingly high quote unquote interest rate, although, that's obviously subjective. I don't think prices are really going to stay, are going to like start to come down or, or stagnate, just because there is such an imbalance of supply demand that, maybe you have a higher interest rate that you would have had 2 years ago, but rents are certainly not inexpensive. So at least if you buy something, I mean, certainly there's no guarantees with anything, but it seems unlikely that the crash in the depreciation of value so long ago was sort of the opposite, a lack of buyers and just too many people, too extended, and that became a problem. And my opinion is I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, because there just still is so many buyers out there to such little demand that I think anytime you can get into the home, maybe it's at a quote unquote high point, but I think it's going to be higher in 3 months. It's going to be higher in a year. It's going to be higher in 2 years. So
you're talking about like my major fear that my house went up $100,000 in value since we've bought it, but our upgrade has also went up $100,000. So getting into higher rates and higher payments at that larger price point, and then the market crashing, it keeps me up at night, or at least it keeps me in my house for now.
Yeah, and I think people are staying in their homes too because of the rates that they have. So they're holding on, kind of waiting. They may want to, look at a bigger home due to family, or maybe they want to downgrade, whatever the situation may be. But they're just holding tight because of the rates that they had, in the last few years.
People love their rates more than they dislike their home. Mm-hmm. So it's tough. In rates have been up and down quite a bit for the last 6 months. I mean, more dramatically than they had been in the past. But it seems like they're maybe starting to trickle down, and depending on who you listen to on any given day, I think there's maybe some anticipation that they're going to come down, later this year. And I think if rates get semi close to where the majority of people are, the majority of homeowners already have rates. If the majority of homeowners have a rate of 3.5% and rates are in the 4.5%. It's higher, but it's not 6.5% where you're really just uncomfortable upgrading that, or, increasing your rates that much. So I think if they can get a little bit closer, it'll sort of spur on those sellers that were leery about selling.
Kind of close that gap a little bit.
Yeah, it doesn't have to probably equal it, but just to minimize it a little bit. And then people won't be so, upset about giving up what, they may never get again. I mean, that's going to be tough.
2019, huge equity in our house, would have been a great time to upgrade. Could have saw, if we would have purchased at that time, saw a huge value increase in what we've bought with good rates.
I mean, at least you still got the equity at the end of the day, compared to renting. I think there's advantages there, even if you're at that higher rate and instead of renting, right?
I can't believe what people are paying for rent right now. That just blows me away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the rate's higher than what you would have got, but I'd bet money that in a couple of years, the value of the home that you might buy today would be even more in a few years, and would it offset the interest expense that you'd have carried it? I mean, who knows? But I think those values are likely to continue to go up. Mm-hmm. Maybe not as dramatically as they have been over the past couple of years, but enough where it maybe makes sense to get in.
Right.
Just because it's still going to increase in value.
And Steve, remember that you can always refinance if you get into another house. You just have to be comfortable with the payment.
Continuously getting pre-approved with our MLO, because we'll get pre-approved, won't find anything, and then we'll have to go back and re-up that. Is that something that you guys see all the time? Is that a problem?
No, that's very common, just to talk it through. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's people who are like tire kickers or just can't find it for years, and every 4, 5, 6 months you update their application, and that's all right. I mean, there's really no downside. It's pretty little work on our end. So, Yeah. You're not burdening anybody. That's for sure.
That way, when you're like, oh, they're taking offers tonight, then you're ready to actually take action.
I mean, honestly, we see that all the time. It's a Friday at 3:00 and the phone starts to ring with people in a panic because this home got listed and they have to look at it this weekend because it's the only time that works and it's going to be off by month, and so it's like everybody didn't plan well. And now all of a sudden they're trying to get a hold of somebody in a frantic on a Friday afternoon to get pre-approved. Like it's poor planning, obviously, but that's a hard place to be too. I hope you can get it done in time. So if you're in the market and you could make an offer in an instant if the right home came up, you need to keep your pre-approval alive.
Yeah, we just literally did that because we're doing that roller coaster of should we add on to our house instead of buying a new one, but that's expensive too. It's also hard to find a contractor who's not overly busy or can actually get to the project right now. But then we get into this other point of a new house is up and it's like, oh, let's go look at it. But then we haven't really been looking at pre-approvals. But that's good to know that I should keep that alive.
If you're still potentially in the market of, I might buy the right home that comes on the market. Yeah. Otherwise call the loan officer at 3:00 and hope they're around and they can quick update your stuff. But, it's not, pre-approvals, they're not difficult, but you need to get some stuff to the loan officer. Sometimes we'll have borrowers that are like, well, all my paychecks are just directly deposited at RCU, and so you're good with all that. Well, I wish that was that easy, and at some point maybe it will be, but typically you need a couple pay stubs or a W-2 or obviously a credit pull. So just because you've owned homes in the past and you have accounts at RCU or any lender, that doesn't mean you're just pre-approved or guaranteed a loan. And so there's some work that needs to be done, and it's not difficult, but it's it's there. So
is there any other tips like that you would give to someone who's like, maybe I will, maybe I won't, anything that people could do or should do to stay on top of things before they're really on the market, like they're tire kickers like we were talking about?
I think, first-time home buyers, one of the things I would recommend is to come in and meet with a loan officer, learn about the process, the programs. A lot of people think you need 20% down. You don't need 20% down. Normally it's 3% plus there's down payment programs, a lot of different opportunity. But, to get your credit pulled, let's look at your income, look at if you do have a down payment source as well. Because if there is an issue with any of those things, we can work on it. And we can make it better to maybe get qualified in 30 days or 60 days. But if you don't know what the issue is and you're out shopping, you'll be very disappointed.
Or I guess even if you're like, I'm not on the market, it sounds like that could still be a valuable conversation to have,
oh,
right?
Definitely.
To start, okay, now I know what I need to do.
Even if it's
in 6
year,
months or a year or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. There's really no amount of I talked to somebody too early. It's just, there's just advice that is good advice to start doing, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years before you're a homeowner. If you anticipate being a homeowner sometime down the road and if you haven't gone through it in a while or ever, you should for sure talk to somebody. And to Deb's point, coming in and talking to people, the most successful loan officers, at least on my team, meet with borrowers as often as is possible. And they really tell people hey, let's get you in here. Let's have a conversation. And obviously sometimes that's not realistic depending on where people are moving from or their schedule or whatever. And you don't have to meet face to face, but it's a better experience for everybody, especially people who haven't gone through it before or people who haven't gone through it in a decade or 20 years, because it does not look the same as it did the last time you went through this process,
Mm-hmm.
And so, getting that upfront face-to-face conversation with somebody who knows what they're talking about is, it's hard to really replicate that.
What about people who just started a job or haven't had enough work experience and they come in? Is that a problem?
It has been a problem. It just depends. If you are just, if you're in school, that really qualifies you for your work if you're going into the same field. Now, if you are jumping jobs every other month and we don't have stable income, we want to, make sure that you can afford the house. And so when we're not able to determine what you're making because you're jumping all over, that does become a problem.
I think that just speaks to the value of those conversations again with someone, right? Like it's really case by case at that point.
Right.
Yeah. And to that point, and like the planning ahead where I said, you almost can't plan ahead too far. There are certain like types of income where you need to be on the job for at least 12 months or sometimes 2 years. Like if you have any amount of like, if you're into auto sales and so your income is almost entirely commission, if you need to rely on like bonus or overtime or some kind of a self-employment, like you can't have just started that job a few months ago and expect to earn what you think you're going to make, or maybe even what you realistically are going to make. Those types of variable income that, we don't know what it's going to look like every month. You got to have a pretty steady history of that. At the bare minimum, 12 months, but ideally 2 years. So like if you just took a different position that's heavy into sales, you better not plan on buying a house anytime real soon. So
you both have been doing this pretty long. Is there like a difference in the mindset of people who come in now, kind of like, I want this, I deserve this, I should have this, instead of I have to work for it? Or do people generally just think I should go be able to get a loan for this right away?
It doesn't happen often, but it does at times. And again, the planning is so important. And when people don't have the experience of buying a house and kind of jump in, they're looking for the house, and then they come in and have to realize that they need some money down or the credit that they need or whatever. So yes, it does happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just probably something that's always happened depending on the person. I just met with a 24-year-old would-be first-time home buyer yesterday or 2 days ago. And is in lease until August, so is really trying to plan ahead and, kind of understood the process, was going to have some hurdles as far as the payment was concerned, so wanted to talk that through. And so, definitely not the mindset there. I mean, I would think he was very much like, tell me what I don't know, which is like, that's perfect question to ask when you don't know what the process looks like. Yeah. But yes, one of the loan officers that I work with that I talk to often enough, he said, part of the problem is RCU makes it so easy to do things like auto loans where you can walk in and get a check and walk out in an hour. And so like amazing, and that's the way it should be. But the home loan experience isn't walk in, we quick run your credit and you tell us, how much you make, and then you walk out with your money in an hour. Like it's just, that's not how it's going to work. So, sometimes just that expectation of, it's a little bit different than, the personal loan that you took out last month. And we're happy that went so well, but this isn't going to be as quick.
Those educational opportunities is what comes to mind, especially like the example that you had with that conversation. Like, tell me what I don't know. Like, that's perfect. Like, you're not going to get that in that completely, automated experience.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's tough.
And speaking of education, we do have on our website, we have opportunities for first-time home buyers to do classes. We actually give $100 credit for them doing that, and it's really good information. There's a lot of terminology in the mortgage world that you hear and people don't know what it means. So just gives you an opportunity to kind of study and understand how the process goes. But meeting with a mortgage loan officer, either face-to-face, some people like to do it on the phone, but also Zoom as well, is just a great way to educate people, especially like Jake was talking about the first time going through the process, or if it's been a long time.
I mean, that's one good thing that Royal does that's different, right? Like the rates that are published on rcu.org are the rates for that day. They're updated daily. So
Correct.
That's different than a lot of places.
Yeah. Oh, really? How do other people do it?
They don't. You have to call in. And I think it makes it difficult because someone like me, I'm always, I'm in a hurry and I'm looking and I want places to be transparent for what they have to offer.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And there are places, and obviously there's some successful places that operate like that. That they don't publish their rates. They force you to start the process so much so that they can gather your information, and then they're very diligent about calling you. Years ago, I was trying to find the rates of an online lender who shall remain nameless, but everybody would recognize their name, and they didn't publish it. So I went far enough into the application. I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'll get to the point where they give me their information, and they never did. So I stopped. And every single day for a month, including Sundays, I would get a call at about 8 or 8:30 in the morning every single day for a month. And I honestly, I never answered because I knew what it was. And I thought, I wonder when they're going to stop. And it was about a month.
Oh, wow.
And Sundays included. So
that's intense.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, just leave me alone here.
Another thing, you're talking about the phone calls. And,
yes, this is a good topic.
When someone applies for a mortgage, they do an application, their credit is pulled. Well, unfortunately, what happens is the credit bureaus sell their information to mortgage lenders. They're called trigger leads. And our poor borrowers, they need to opt out ahead of time, normally about 30 days before they start the process, because all of a sudden their information, it's out of our control. Their information is sold to multiple lenders that are calling, trying to solicit their business. We've had borrowers get 30 to 40 calls
a day.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell those borrowers? Like, that has to upset people.
Oh, yes. It upsets me.
Yeah.
We try to not put their phone number in the application, but it still comes up on their credit, from previous information.
Right.
We tell them to opt out.
Getting yourself on like the do not call list.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably just advisable anyway, because who wants those calls?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So getting yourself on the do not call list, I think. I hate to say it solves the problem, because you never know if everybody's compliant with those lists. But yeah, it doesn't seem to happen to everybody, which makes me think that those people are probably on the do not call list.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some people it happens, 20, 30 times in a day. And back to kind of the ruthless competition. You get all sorts of stories about what those people calling will say. Sometimes they'll say, well, the lender you applied with, they can't do your loan anyway, or they won't give you what they're telling you, so they'll just be dishonest. Or I've even had a story from an MLO who said their borrower told them that we contacted that other lender because we weren't able to help and we wanted them to help. So,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And borrowers are, members and borrowers think that we gave up their information, which, my response is always, why would I'm here to do a mortgage. Like, that's what our job is. Why would I want somebody else to also solicit? Why would I want 20 somebody else's to solicit you for a mortgage? Clearly we don't have an interest in that.
Right.
But it just gets frustrating to get that many calls.
Is that a good example of, like, if a member came in, you could remind them to opt out of this?
You could, but I think it takes a couple weeks or maybe like up to a month. Like, if you opt out today, it might take some time. So if you were going to come in tomorrow and I told you to opt out today, it might be too late.
If nothing else, though, you could have that conversation like, all right, this is just part of the process. Like,
warn them.
Don't panic when your phone starts to ring off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's a tough problem to solve. I don't know what the solution is other than opt out.
Yeah. One of the other things I really want to talk about, because it's so exciting and beneficial for borrowers, is we do have the Federal Home Loan Bank down payment program. And it's for low to moderate income. As long as they qualify, $7,000 they can put towards their down payment or closing costs. They only need to have $1,000 minimum contribution towards the purchase.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So we're very excited about that and helping borrowers out.
How recent is that?
That started this year.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you seen a lot of people taking advantage of that?
Yes, trying to take advantage of it, looking for those homes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
stuff.
Sure. So the inventory is still a problem, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have had some people take advantage of it, and for those that can, it's really, it's pretty amazing. It is tough though, because you have to be low to moderate income, which then obviously limits your price point that you can buy a house at, and there's maybe not as much inventory right now at that your affordable price point.
Yeah.
So that becomes the really kind of the biggest hurdle to get over for those borrowers, is just finding a house that's affordable for them to be able to take advantage of it. But they're out there. We close a few. Obviously I'm in Eau Claire. Deb's, team is in larger cities too. But, in a lot of the little outlying towns, you can still get an affordable home. You're maybe just not in the city. but if you're willing to buy in a smaller town or outside of town for a while, affordability opens up for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great tool to just have in your toolbox for those conversations with borrowers who are like, I didn't think I could do this. Maybe I can. Like, take a second look at it, really. So.
Yeah, that's why I said it's so important to come in and just talk and see what's available, because there's other programs that are available too for down payment assistance.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of body language that MLOs will, that have been doing this for a while. You can kind of tell where people are uncomfortable about things, or maybe you explain something and you're like looking at them and like, I don't think you understood what I just said. Right. And if that's impossible to do really via email, unless people are like, I don't get what you told me there.
It's like me during this whole podcast.
Yeah, right. You're like just deer in the headlights. But I mean, honestly, thankfully, most, if not everybody on our team is pretty seasoned, where they've had enough conversations where you can tell people they're not getting it, or they've got maybe more questions, or maybe they answer a question with a little pause and you're like, wait a second. What was that about? Like, I asked you about your employment or your income and you kind of hesitated a little bit, like, what do I need to know? So, I mean, that's why those unknowns are hard to deal with, like a week ahead of closing, where it's like, oh no. And like it or not, I mean, we find sometimes people think that, I didn't think that was going to be important, or maybe I thought it was going to be important, but I didn't tell you anyway. We find out probably about most of it, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe not everything, but that's probably going to come up sometime.
Yeah. So if you're purchasing a home, don't be buying a car during the process. Don't be buying your brand new furniture, spending your down payment.
Opening credit cards.
Yes.
Changing jobs midstream.
Quitting right at the end.
Mm-hmm. There was a survey done. I don't know if it was like a survey of RCU's members necessarily, or if it was broader than that, but it was about banking services and like, what are people's preferences for how that process goes? Do you want an all in person, all digital? How does your average, Joe American want to interact? And mortgages was something that they wanted, that hybrid. They wanted to be able to automate things, but they wanted to know that there's a person that I can call or meet with if I have questions or there's issues along the way. And as automated as things might get, it seems like the process is so foreign to most people that they want to know that there's a real live human somewhere helping me out. And if I trust you, all the better, and right. But to have it truly be there's a machine controlling the back end, and, could it get like that? I suppose probably to some extent, but people want to have that conversation. People need to be talked out of a bad decision sometimes, and, a human in person needs to do that.
In going through the loan process, that's really important. And for us to be at the closing as well, to make sure they understand everything, or if they have any additional questions. But after the loan closes and they have a question about a payment, or maybe their escrow account for taxes or insurance, that they always follow up with us as well. And we can reach out to our servicing department and get answers for them.
But that's like the nice thing about Royal, is that we have this whole team that backs us up.
Because you have a loan for a long time. I mean, we help people for a month, couple of months, well, maybe a year if you're like on and off the fence for a long time. But you're going to have your mortgage for quite a few years, probably. So, yeah, that's a big, our servicing department is a big part of our success. Mm-hmm. Being able to say, hey, we have local people who you will talk to, that's important.
Yeah, we actually build a relationship, with the borrowers and stuff too. You get to know them pretty well. They get to know you really well too. So,
James, this is a good time for you to pitch the mortgage servicing podcast that we've done in the past, with Alyssa and Bailey, about escrow. I just love that I've been throwing things at you all day, and you just
check out. Yeah, this makes me think of our previous Money Donuts episode that we did with the mortgage servicing team. There's some great takeaways there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said.
Home run, right over the plate.
Yeah, I'll do the sound effects for you guys. Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to hit before we wrap this up?
We do, with the acquisition and stuff like that with Lake Area Mortgage, we do have those products available to us too, which we didn't before. So, not only do we have your conforming loans that we do here, but we have portfolio loans, which really means it's a niche product, so it's Royal Credit Union and stuff that we're able to do. But now we also have Lake Area Mortgage, the government loans, the FHA, the VA, Minnesota Housing, renovation loans.
So what I'm hearing is that if you're listening to this, we can pretty much help you with any type of mortgage for the most part.
Yeah, we have most of them. We have them all available.
My weird question is, what type of relationship do you guys have with realtors?
You go, I go.
What was that?
We go?
You go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, realtors are certainly referral sources, and we work with them on most transactions. Obviously, like for sale by owners, not as much, but yeah, I mean, we would certainly want to have a close and good relationship with realtors. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's things that we work with good realtors well. Not everybody. I mean, obviously they want to sell homes too, and sometimes we ask questions, and we, I don't want to say getting in the way, but we certainly try to do the best to maintain those relationships with realtors, because they're important partners with us, obviously, and builders, as well. I think we do a good job with that.
Yeah, I think so too. And one thing about realtors is the communication. We want to make sure that we're very transparent with our communication. So we always try reaching out and letting them know each step, but we also have automated services that send them emails with every update that's happening for both the buyer and selling agent.
Yeah.
They appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, we get, I don't know the percentage, but we get a lot of, referrals from realtors that we've worked with, multiple times, and certainly, some closer realtors than others, just based on, how relationships work. But yes, a lot of the MLOs have pretty good relationships with, a number of realtors where they're hoping to get those referrals coming in. It's tricky now though, because as I mentioned before, there's no shortage of buyers. So it's hard for, we don't work with sellers often, and that's what realtors are really hoping, for, is more sellers. So, yeah, there's having realtors send us buyers, or us sending, referrals out to realtors for buyers too, isn't, sellers are what everybody wants at this point.
Right. But I think with realtors, the ones that are referring over are the ones that are not pre-approved. And so they're good at referring over to us as well, to let them know, hey, go meet with this loan officer. They'll take you through the process and so you know what you're approved for.
And if somebody's looking for a realtor from the MLO position, what makes a good realtor, would you say?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's really based on the person. So I usually give out multiple names of realtors, and I always ask questions, how they work and this and that, and go with who you're comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, what I was going to say, and this is truly like from an MLO standpoint, ones that just communicate well. Mm-hmm. Not every realtor communicates well. So sometimes, we'll get a contract, and Steve's going to buy this house, and then maybe 2 weeks later, there was an amendment to the contract and the price changed a little bit, or what, the date was going to change. And we don't always get that information until, like at the closing or the day before closing, when we're trying to, finalize numbers. And we're like, oh, we didn't know that happened 2 weeks ago. So the ones that communicate well and often and give good details are responsive. And it's it's a fairly low bar, like just let us know what's happening along the way. Those are the ones from my perspective that are easy to deal with, or easiest to deal with. Just be a partner. We want to have a partner in the transaction, not somebody who just, wrote a contract and then kind of was like, well, all right, well, you take it from here. Like, let's work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to lead to the smoothest experience for borrowers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, makes sense.
What I'm gathering is that MLOs take a lot of left turns. Like, you'll start your day out being like, this is going to be a great day. And it's like, nope.
Oh, yes. You don't know. I always start my day off with, this is what I'm going to do. And then I don't touch anything on my list, and I'm chasing after things.
Does that constantly happen?
Yeah. Firefighter is the best description of the job. Is it's like, you don't really know exactly what's going to happen until it happens. Mm-hmm. But, not always. You can hopefully plan for like those, hey, let's do this and don't do that. But you can only plan for so much. You can only caution people about doing so many things. And you're like, oh, I didn't think you were going to do that. I didn't say anything about that. Shoot. I wasn't expecting that.
Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you guys taking your time to do that today. James, if people want to hear more about Money Donuts, what should they do?
Yeah, they should listen to Money Donuts on their favorite podcast platform. They can check out the Money Donuts YouTube channel, or they can visit rcu.org/podcast.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys later.